Dr. Lisa Carter sat in the control room of the Arecibo 2 facility, watching screens full of numbers and waves that most people would never understand. She had been doing this job for 8 years, listening to the empty sounds of space, hoping one day something would talk back. Most nights were quiet, filled only with the hum of machines and the distant sound of coffee brewing in the break room. The clock on the wall showed 2:47 in the morning when everything changed. The usual background noise that filled her headphones suddenly stopped, replaced by something that made her heart race. Clear, organized sounds were coming through the speakers, sounds that had patterns and structure. This was not the random noise of dying stars or cosmic radiation. This was a message. Lisa's hands moved quickly across the control panel, recording everything while her mind tried to process what she was hearing. The sounds were unlike anything humans had ever made, but they were clearly artificial. Someone, or something, was talking out there in the darkness of space. She called her supervisor, Dr. Alan Brooks, who lived 20 minutes away from the facility. Alan arrived in 15 minutes, still wearing his pajamas under a hastily thrown-on coat. He listened to the recording 3 times before speaking. The IBOR message was complex, filled with mathematical sequences and what appeared to be star charts. But the most shocking part was what came next. As they continued to listen, more messages arrived, each one more detailed than the last. The aliens were discussing Earth, but not in the way that first contact stories usually imagined. They were talking about invasion plans, troop numbers, and something called the Zephyrian Empire. The beings sending these messages were called the Hegemony, and they had mistakenly sent their military communications to Earth's radio frequency instead of their intended target. Alan called the emergency number for the Global Defense Command, an organization that most people thought was just for monitoring space junk and asteroid threats. Within an hour, military vehicles surrounded the facility. Commander Jake Morrison arrived with a team of specialists, including linguists, mathematicians, and intelligence officers. Morrison was a practical man who had seen enough false alarms to be skeptical. His first assumption was that this was either a hoax or some kind of foreign government test. But as Professor Alan Brooks and his team began analyzing the mathematical complexity of the messages, that theory quickly fell apart. The calculations were beyond human capability, using number systems and physics that Earth's scientists were only beginning to understand. Dr. Carter continued monitoring the frequency while teams of experts worked around her. More messages came through, each one adding to the picture of what was heading toward Earth. The Hegemony had a fleet of 200 warships, each one capable of destroying entire continents. They had weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop nuclear bombs. The intercepted messages revealed that Earth was just another target in the Hegemony's expansion. They had conquered dozens of worlds, always following the same pattern. First, they would study the target from a distance, cataloging military capabilities and population centers. Then they would arrive with overwhelming force, demanding surrender. Species that surrendered were enslaved. Those that fought back were eliminated. What made the situation even more terrifying was that the Hegemony had done their homework on humanity. Their intelligence reports, which Earth was now reading, showed that they knew about human nuclear weapons, military bases, and government structures. They had been watching Earth for months, preparing for what they expected to be an easy conquest, but the aliens had made one critical mistake. By sending their communications to the wrong frequency, they had given humanity access to their complete battle plans. Earth now knew exactly when the invasion would begin, how many ships were coming, and what their tactical approach would be. The Hegemony expected to find a primitive world with basic weapons and no space-based defenses. President Susan Walsh was awakened at 4:30 in the morning and briefed on the situation. By dawn, she had activated the Global Defense Council, a group of military leaders and scientists from every major nation on Earth. The meeting took place in an underground bunker beneath the Pentagon, with leaders participating by secure video. link from around the world. General Roy Patterson laid out the harsh reality of Earth's situation. Humanity had 12 orbital defense platforms, originally built to deflect asteroids. The largest military spacecraft were cargo ships designed for moon colonies. Earth's most advanced fighters were atmospheric aircraft that could barely reach low orbit. Against 200 alien warships with advanced technology, humanity's chances looked hopeless. Dr. Carter presented the intercepted communications to the Council, explaining what they had learned about hegemony tactics and technology. The aliens relied heavily on energy shields and long-range weapons. They preferred to stay in space, using orbital bombardment rather than ground invasions. Their ships were large and heavily armored, designed to overpower opponents through superior firepower. But as Dr. Carter continued her analysis, she noticed something important. The hegemony's communications revealed a pattern of thinking that was different from human military doctrine. They had never fought a species that used guerrilla tactics or asymmetric warfare. Every civilization they had conquered had tried to meet them in direct battle, ship against ship, which always ended in defeat. The aliens seemed to have no concept of deception or misdirection in warfare. Their communications were sent in clear text, with no encryption beyond their language barriers. They announced their plans openly, assuming that intercepting their messages would be impossible for a primitive species like humanity. This oversight was about to become their greatest weakness. As the council meeting continued, a plan began to form. Earth could not win a direct fight against the hegemony fleet, but humanity had 6 months before the invasion began. 6 months to prepare, to build, and to turn the aliens' own intelligence against them. The species that had conquered dozens of worlds was about to learn that they had dialed the wrong number when they decided to target Earth. Commander Morrison ended the meeting with a simple statement that would define humanity's response to the coming invasion. Earth would not surrender, and they would not fight the war that the hegemony expected. Instead, they would show these alien conquerors why picking a fight with humanity was the biggest mistake in their empire's history. Engineer Kate Phillips had never imagined that her job designing mining equipment would suddenly become the most important work on Earth. 3 days after the alien communications were discovered, she found herself in charge of Project Hammer, a crash program to turn every available spacecraft into a weapon. The conference room at the Houston Space Center was filled with blueprints, coffee cups, and engineers who had not slept in 48 hours. Kate looked at the list of available resources and felt her stomach drop. Humanity had 17 civilian mining ships, 12 cargo haulers, 6 research vessels, and 43 communication satellites. Against 200 alien warships, it seemed like bringing stones to a gunfight. But Kate had grown up in a family of mechanics, and she knew that sometimes the best weapons were the ones nobody expected. The mining ships became her first priority. These vessels were built to crack asteroids and haul massive amounts of ore, which meant they already had powerful drilling equipment and reinforced hulls. Kate's team began retrofitting them with makeshift weapon systems, turning mining lasers into ship-to-ship cannons and ore processors into kinetic bombardment platforms. Meanwhile, cryptographer Ben Taylor worked in a basement office that had become the center of humanity's intelligence war against the hegemony. His job was to crack the alien communication protocols completely, not just understand their messages, but learn to send fake ones. Ben had been breaking codes since he was 12 years old, starting with simple puzzles and working his way up to foreign government encryptions. The alien language was unlike anything humans had encountered, but Ben noticed that their mathematical concepts were universal. Numbers were numbers, whether calculated by human or alien minds. By studying the patterns in their technical communications, he began to understand their data formatting and transmission methods. After 2 weeks of 18-hour days, Ben achieved his breakthrough. The first test message was simple. Ben sent a fake communication that appeared to come from a hegemony scout ship, reporting that Earth's orbital defenses were even weaker than originally estimated. The response came back within hours, confirming that the aliens had received and believed the false information. Earth now had the ability to feed disinformation directly into the enemy's communication network. Captain Amy Foster took command of the most dangerous part of the preparation, establishing hidden weapon platforms throughout the asteroid belt. Her background was in deep space mining operations, which made her perfect for the job of turning space rocks into secret military bases. Amy's teams used mining equipment to hollow out asteroids and fill them with nuclear warheads and mass drivers. The work was exhausting and dangerous. Each asteroid had to be carefully selected and modified to look natural from the outside while hiding powerful weapons within. Amy's crews worked in bulky spacesuits, using cutting torches and explosives to carve out weapon bays and control centers. The finished platforms would appear on alien sensors as nothing more than ordinary space debris. Back on Earth, Dr. Peter Hayes led a team of scientists studying every piece of biological information they could extract from the alien. Communications. The hegemony occasionally transmitted medical data and environmental reports, which gave Peter crucial insights into their physiology. What he discovered could change the entire course of the coming war. The aliens had evolved on a world with much less radiation than Earth. Their bodies were highly sensitive to certain energy wavelengths that barely affected humans. This weakness explained why their ships used heavy shielding and why their communications avoided certain frequency ranges. Peter began developing weapons specifically designed to exploit this vulnerability. As the weeks passed, the deception campaign showed remarkable success. Ben's fake communications convinced the hegemony that Earth's space program was even more primitive than they had originally thought. The aliens believed that humans were still using chemical rockets exclusively and had no weapons more advanced than nuclear missiles. They had no idea that Earth was frantically building fusion-powered weapons and energy systems. Kate's engineering teams made breakthrough after breakthrough. The mining ships were transformed into mobile weapons platforms, their drilling equipment converted into armor-piercing railguns. The cargo haulers became stealth bombers, their large cargo bays filled with guided missiles and their hulls coated with radar-absorbing materials. Even the International Space Station was secretly converted into a fortress bristling with defensive weapons. The communication satellites received special attention from Kate's teams. These small spacecraft were repositioned throughout Earth's orbital space and armed with kinetic bombardment systems. To alien sensors, they would appear as standard communication equipment right up until the moment they began dropping tungsten rods on enemy ships. Ben's intelligence work revealed critical information about hegemony fleet movements and tactical doctrine. The aliens preferred to attack in standard formations, with their largest ships in the center and smaller vessels providing support. They had never encountered an enemy that used swarm tactics or hit-and-run strategies. Their entire military philosophy was based on overwhelming firepower and intimidation. Dr. Hayes made another important discovery when he analyzed atmospheric data from hegemony ships. The aliens breathed a gas mixture that was toxic to humans, but also highly flammable under certain conditions. This weakness could be exploited if human forces could breach alien ship hulls and introduce the right chemical compounds into their life support systems. President Walsh visited the construction sites personally, seeing the transformed mining, ships, and hidden weapon platforms. The sight of ordinary industrial equipment being converted into instruments of war reminded her of Earth's history, when farmers had become soldiers and factories had switched from making cars to building tanks. Humanity had always been at its best when facing impossible odds. Commander Morrison coordinated the overall defense strategy, making sure that each part of the plan worked together. The hidden asteroid platforms would provide the first wave of attacks, followed by the converted mining ships and cargo haulers. The orbital defense stations would protect Earth itself, while the satellite weapons would target any alien ships that broke through the outer defenses. As the fourth month of preparation began, intercepted hegemony communications showed that the aliens remained completely confident about their upcoming invasion. They still believed Earth possessed only primitive weapons and no significant space-based defenses. The deception had worked perfectly, setting the stage for the greatest surprise attack in military history. The species that had conquered dozens of worlds was about to learn that they had seriously underestimated the ingenuity and determination of humanity. Earth was no longer the helpless target that the hegemony expected to find. Instead, the aliens were flying straight into a trap that would turn their own tactics against them. Admiral Kevin Ross watched the display screens in the hidden command center on Luna as space itself seemed to tear apart at the edge of the solar system. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly where Earth's calculations had predicted, 200 alien warships appearing in perfect formation, like dark angels bringing death from the stars. Each ship was massive, easily 10 times larger than anything humanity had ever built, their hulls gleaming with the promise of unstoppable destruction. The alien vessels moved with mechanical precision, arranging themselves in the classic hegemony attack formation that Ben Taylor's intelligence team had studied for months. The largest dreadnoughts positioned themselves at the center, surrounded by smaller cruisers and destroyers. It was the same formation they had used to conquer every other world in their empire, a formation that had never failed them before. Ross felt his hands shake slightly as he realized that everything humanity had worked for over the past 6 months was about to be tested. The converted mining ships were hidden throughout the asteroid belt, their crews waiting in silent tension. The orbital defense platforms around Earth hummed with barely contained energy. Every human spacecraft, from the smallest satellite to the largest cargo hauler, was ready for the fight of their species' life. The hegemony commander began broadcasting the standard surrender demand, his alien voice translated by the communication systems that Ben had helped design. The message was cold and efficient, offering humanity the choice between slavery and extinction. It was the same ultimatum that had been given to dozens of other worlds, worlds that no longer existed as free civilizations. Admiral Ross activated the communication system and spoke words that would become legendary throughout human history. His voice was calm and steady, carrying the weight of 6 billion people who refused to kneel before alien conquerors. He told the hegemony commander that they had dialed the wrong number, but that humanity was very happy to take their call. Sir, first phase of Earth's defense began immediately as the alien fleet moved deeper into the solar system. What appeared to be ordinary asteroids suddenly revealed their true nature. Massive weapon platforms emerging from rocky shells like deadly flowers blooming in the darkness of space. The hidden railgun batteries opened fire simultaneously, sending streams of hypervelocity projectiles toward the unsuspecting alien ships. The hegemony fleet reacted with shock and confusion as their formation came under attack from positions they could not locate or target effectively. Their sensors had detected nothing more than space debris, but now that debris was shooting back with weapons that punched through their outer shields. The aliens had never encountered an enemy that used camouflage and deception on such a massive scale. Pilot Lucy Green led the first wave of human fighters, her converted mining ship racing toward the alien fleet at speeds that made her teeth rattle. The human vessels moved in ways that violated every principle of hegemony naval doctrine, swarming like angry insects rather than maintaining organized formations. Lucy's ship dove between 2 alien destroyers, her improvised weapons system carving deep gouges in their hulls before they could react. The hegemony ships were designed to fight enemies that followed predictable patterns, massive vessels that would engage in formal battle lines. They had no experience dealing with small, fast ships that exploited every blind spot and vulnerability. Human pilots used their intimate knowledge of their own equipment to push their ships beyond safe limits, performing maneuvers that would have been impossible with more advanced but less flexible technology. Captain Charles Young commanded the retrofitted cargo hauler New Frontier, his ship disguised as a piece of space junk until the moment it activated its hidden fusion drive. The massive vessel accelerated toward a hegemony cruiser like a bullet fired from a god's gun, its reinforced hull glowing with heat as it prepared for a ramming attack that would either destroy the enemy or obliterate itself in the attempt. The alien communication networks buzzed with panic and confusion as their carefully planned invasion turned into a nightmare of unexpected resistance. Ben Taylor's monitoring stations intercepted dozens of frantic messages as hegemony commanders tried to understand how a primitive world had managed to mount such an effective defense. Their intelligence had been completely wrong, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. Dr. Peter Hayes watched from the Earth Defense Command as his radiation weapons were deployed for the first time in actual combat. The specialized energy beams targeted the aliens' physiological weaknesses, flooding their ships with radiation frequencies that were harmless to humans but devastating to hegemony biology. Alien crew members collapsed at their stations as their sensitive nervous systems were overwhelmed by energy their evolution had never prepared them to handle. The asteroid belt became a maze of destruction as hidden weapon platforms continued to emerge from their rocky disguises. Amy Foster's teams had spent months preparing this trap, and now it was working exactly as designed. Hegemony ships found themselves under fire from all directions, unable to determine where the next attack would come from or how many more weapons were still hidden among the space debris. Admiral Ross coordinated the defense from his command center, watching as humanity's desperate gamble began to pay off. The alien fleet was larger and more powerful, but they were fighting a war they did not understand against an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Every assumption the hegemony had made about human capabilities was proving to be catastrophically wrong. The battle raged across millions of kilometers of space as human ships darted between alien vessels like sharks attacking whales. Lucy Green's squadron used the asteroid field for cover, appearing from behind space rocks to deliver devastating attacks before disappearing again. The converted mining equipment proved surprisingly effective at penetrating alien armor, which had been designed to stop energy weapons rather than high-velocity kinetic projectiles. The hegemony formation began to break apart as commanders tried to adapt to tactics they had never encountered before. Ships that had maintained perfect spacing for centuries of conquest now scattered in confusion, their crews struggling to target enemies that moved like no civilized species ever had. The aliens were learning too late that there was nothing civilized about humanity when their survival was at stake. As the first day of battle drew to a close, it became clear that the hegemony's easy conquest had become anything but easy. The species that had planned to enslave Earth was discovering that they had picked the wrong planet to invade and the wrong species to underestimate. The second week of fighting showed the galaxy something it had never seen before. While every other species the hegemony had conquered had either surrendered quickly or fought desperately for a few days before being crushed, humanity seemed to grow stronger as the battle continued. The harder the aliens pushed, the more creative and vicious human resistance became. Lieutenant Commander Steve Patterson coordinated the defense of the outer planets from his command ship, hidden in Jupiter's massive radiation belt. The converted mining vessels under his command had been specially shielded to operate in the deadly environment that surrounded the gas giant. When hegemony scout ships attempted to use Jupiter's moons as staging areas, they found themselves flying into a radiation hell that their sensitive electronics could not survive. Steve's tactics were simple, but brutally effective. His ships would lure alien vessels into Jupiter's magnetosphere, then watch as the intense radiation fried their navigation systems and life support. The hegemony crews, evolved on low-radiation worlds, began dying within minutes of exposure to the energy fields that human ships passed through safely. It was like watching vampires try to fight in direct sunlight. On Mars, Colonel Rita Hughes commanded the planetary defense network that had been disguised as mining operations for the past 6 months. Her massive railgun batteries were built into the sides of mountains and powered by fusion reactors buried deep underground. When hegemony landing craft attempted to establish beachheads on the Red Planet, they discovered that every valley and crater held hidden weapons that could punch through their armor like tissue paper. Rita had grown up on a cattle ranch in Texas, and she approached war with the same practical mindset she had used for managing livestock. The aliens were predators trying to attack her herd, so she would kill them with whatever tools were available. Her crews operated the defense cannons with the efficiency of farmers working harvesting equipment, treating the destruction of alien ships as just another day's work. The turning point of the entire war came when Dr. Carter's technical team achieved something that military experts had thought impossible. Working with Ben Taylor's communication specialists, they successfully penetrated the hegemony's fleet network and uploaded a computer virus that would spread throughout their ships like a digital plague. The virus was elegantly simple in its destruction. It caused the alien navigation systems to misidentify friendly ships as enemy targets, turning their own weapons against each other. Suddenly, the perfect formations that had conquered dozens of worlds became death traps as hegemony. Vessels opened fire on their own fleet. The aliens' superior coordination and discipline became weaknesses when their computers could no longer tell friend from enemy. Captain Charles Young became a legend throughout the human fleet when his cargo ship New Frontier scored the first capital ship kill of the war. His vessel, originally designed to haul supplies to moon colonies, had been fitted with an improvised fusion ram that turned the entire ship into a guided missile. Charles aimed his ship at the bridge of a hegemony dreadnought and activated the fusion drive at maximum power. The collision was visible from Earth as 2 massive explosions lit up the darkness of space. The alien dreadnought, designed to withstand energy weapons and missile attacks, had no defense against a human ship that simply refused to stop coming. Charles and his crew died instantly, but their sacrifice opened a hole in the hegemony formation that human fighters exploited ruthlessly. Dr. Peter Hayes watched the battle from his laboratory, monitoring the effects of the radiation weapons he had developed. The specialized energy beams were proving even more effective than he had hoped, as the aliens' evolutionary weakness to certain frequencies made their own advanced technology useless. Hegemony crew members were collapsing at their stations faster than their medical teams could treat them. The human strategy was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Instead of trying to match the aliens' superior technology, humanity fought with creativity, desperation, and a complete willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Human pilots rammed their ships into alien vessels when their weapons ran out of ammunition. Engineers jury-rigged weapons from industrial equipment in the middle of battle. Soldiers turned civilian spacecraft into suicide bombs rather than let the enemy advance. Pilot Lucy Green led increasingly daring raids deep into hegemony formations, her squadron of converted mining ships moving like wolves through a flock of sheep. The aliens had never faced enemies who fought with such apparent disregard for their own safety, not understanding that humans were not being reckless but were instead making calculated decisions about acceptable losses. The asteroid belt had become a graveyard of alien ships, their hulls cracked open by weapons that should not have existed. Amy Foster's hidden platforms continued to reveal themselves at strategic moments, always appearing where the hegemony least expected resistance. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, striking from positions that appeared empty moments before. Communication intercepts showed that panic was spreading throughout the hegemony fleet as commanders realized they were not fighting the primitive world their intelligence had described. These humans used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare, attacking from hidden positions and using deception on a scale that seemed impossible for a single planet to coordinate. Admiral Ross coordinated the overall human strategy. From his lunar command center, watching as his species proved something that no other civilization had ever demonstrated. Technological superiority meant nothing against opponents who refused to accept defeat and were willing to turn anything into a weapon. The hegemony had brought the tools of conquest, but humanity had brought the will to use whatever was necessary to survive. The alien fleet that had numbered 200 ships at the beginning of the invasion was now reduced to fewer than 60 functional vessels. Their formation discipline had collapsed, their communication networks were compromised, and their crews were dying from radiation weapons they could not defend against. The species that had never lost a conquest was facing their first defeat at the hands of a world they had expected to crush in days. As the third week of fighting began, it became clear that the hegemony's invasion of Earth had become something entirely different. Instead of a conquest, it had become a desperate struggle for survival against an enemy that seemed to grow more dangerous with every passing day. The final battle began as Earth's sun rose over the Pacific Ocean, casting long shadows across a world that refused to surrender. The remnants of the hegemony fleet, reduced to 37 ships from their original 200, gathered in Earth's orbit for one last desperate assault. Their formation was ragged and broken, nothing like the perfect military precision they had displayed when the invasion began 6 weeks earlier. Admiral Ross watched from his command station as the alien ships positioned themselves for what their intercepted communications revealed would be a final attempt to glass Earth's surface. The hegemony commander had abandoned all pretense of conquest and occupation. If his fleet could not claim this world for the Empire, then he would ensure that no world remained for humanity to inhabit. The human defense fleet met them in the space between Earth and Luna, a collection of ships that looked like it had been assembled in a junkyard but fought with the coordination of a military force that had been forged in the fires of desperate combat. Mining ships flew alongside converted cargo haulers, their hulls scarred by weeks of battle, but their crews more determined than ever to protect their home. Captain Amy Foster commanded the final wave of asteroid platforms, weapons that had remained, hidden throughout the entire war for exactly this moment. As the hegemony ships moved into their bombardment positions, space around them suddenly erupted with railgun fire from positions the aliens had never detected. The asteroids had been positioned months earlier in Earth's orbital path, appearing as nothing more than space debris until they revealed their deadly purpose. Dr. Hayes activated the Planetary Radiation Defense Network, a system of ground-based transmitters that flooded the space around Earth with energy frequencies specifically tuned to disrupt hegemony physiology. The alien crews found themselves unable to function as their nervous systems were overwhelmed by radiation that passed harmlessly through human ships. It was biological warfare at its most precise, targeting the invaders' evolutionary weaknesses. With surgical accuracy, the hegemony commander, faced with the complete failure of his invasion and the loss of most of his fleet, made the decision that would seal his species' fate. Rather than retreat and report his defeat to the Empire, he chose to activate the planetary destruction weapons that would turn Earth into a lifeless rock. If the hegemony could not have this world, then no one would. But Dr. Hayes had anticipated this final act of spite. His research into alien physiology had revealed not just their sensitivity to certain radiation frequencies, but also the specific wavelengths that would incapacitate their crews without damaging their ships. As the hegemony vessels charged their planet-killing weapons, Earth's defense network bombarded them with precisely calibrated energy beams. The alien crews collapsed at their stations as their bodies were overwhelmed by radiation that felt like fire in their veins. Their ships remained intact and functional, but the beings who operated them were no longer capable of coherent thought. One by one, the massive vessels drifted powerless in Earth's orbit, their crews unconscious or dead from radiation poisoning. Commander Bill Lewis led the boarding parties that captured the disabled alien ships, his teams wearing radiation suits, as they moved through vessels filled with the bodies of their former enemies. The technology they found was beyond anything humanity had imagined. Weapons and engines that operated on principles that Earth's scientists were only beginning to understand. The hegemony survivors, faced with the choice between execution and cooperation, chose to provide information about their empire's structure and weaknesses. The interrogations revealed that the defeated fleet represented only a tiny fraction of the hegemony's total military power, but they also showed that no other species had ever successfully resisted an invasion force. Humanity's victory would send shockwaves throughout the galaxy. President Walsh addressed the United Nations from the same bunker where the Global Defense Council had first learned of the alien threat. The war that was supposed to end with Earth's conquest had instead ended with humanity possessing a captured alien fleet, detailed maps of hegemony space, and technology that would revolutionize human civilization. But more importantly, Earth had proven that the hegemony could be defeated. Kate Phillips and her engineering teams began the process of reverse engineering the captured alien technology, combining it with human innovation to create hybrid systems that were more effective than either species could achieve alone. The mining ships that had served as improvised warships were upgraded with genuine alien weapons, while human tactical doctrine was applied to vessels designed by a completely different military philosophy. Ben Taylor's communication specialists established contact with other worlds within the hegemony empire, broadcasting the news of humanity's victory to species that had been enslaved for generations. The messages were simple but revolutionary, proving that the invincible conquerors could be beaten and providing detailed information about how the victory had been achieved. 6 months after the last hegemony ship had been captured, the first human expedition departed for alien space. The fleet consisted of captured alien vessels crewed by human volunteers and equipped with hybrid technology that combined the best of both civilizations. Admiral Ross commanded the expedition from the bridge of a former hegemony dreadnought, its alien systems now serving humanity's purposes. The species that had planned to conquer Earth was about to receive visitors of their own. When the hegemony homeworld received what they thought was a routine status report from their invasion fleet, they instead heard Admiral Ross's voice delivering a message that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. He told them that their invasion had dialed the wrong number, but that humanity was calling them back. The war that had begun with aliens underestimating a primitive world ended with those same aliens learning why picking a fight with humanity was the worst mistake in their civilization's history. Earth had not only survived the hegemony's invasion, but had turned it into the first step of humanity's expansion into the galaxy. The wrong number that the aliens had dialed when they sent their invasion plans to Earth had become the right number for every enslaved species in the galaxy looking for liberation. Humanity had answered the call, and now they were making calls of their own.